All right, well, welcome everyone to tonight's presentation of Walk and Beyond. And we're really pleased that you could be here. We thank Curry County Voices for being here recording the event, and you can pass the word along that anyone that missed out and would like to get more information, that they can turn to Curry County Voices to watch the presentation. So tonight, we're very pleased to have Alisa Green here. Alisa has been a surgical nurse for over 25 years, and during that time she's also been an educator as well as an advocate for patients, residents, and her own parents who lived in assisted living. The ABCs of assisted living was written to bring public awareness and to share valuable and insightful information to support you and your loved ones as you make your choices. So, book available if you're interested. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alisa, and I hope you have plenty of questions for her, and time is yours.
Thank you very much, Doug. Well, thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight. It's always nice to have a nice group that is interested and welcoming, and I've known some of you for many years, and it's really great to see you, so welcome. I wanted to say that, yes, I have been a surgical nurse for many years, and however, I've always had other things in addition to surgical nursing. And so with that, it's been a lot of fun over the years to learn and to be able to share my learning with others. And so thanks again for being here. So when I was 15, I was an entrepreneur and had my own business and used to ride my bike across town and would clean houses for my boyfriend's grandparents. And so with that, I would sit there for just a few minutes when I'd arrive, you'd ridden a couple of miles and took a moment, and I realized that they really like to talk. And so it was really a great time to get to know his grandparents during that time. And also during that time, and as your life goes on, you start connecting the dots, right? And how things are. And so after I would clean, they too would want to talk. And so it was really great to have that time to be able just to share their life and to share their struggles and just to truly reach out to me as another human being. They lived in a high-rise apartment, which was an assisted living at that time, back in the 80s. And the amenities were not real great. They initially were doing their own laundry, and as time went on, they were able to pay a gal to come and do their laundry once a week. And so when we look backwards at where assisted living was, it's come a long way. When I talk about assisted living, I'm mainly talking about the assisted living communities. And when locally we think of Seaview and Ocean Park and also Azalea Gardens. And so they are communities where people live. It is their home. They have an apartment. And then there is activities around that space and care. There's other kinds of care facilities, and I do want to mention them just to help clarify a little bit. There's also foster care, which a lot of people consider that is a home environment as well. And so they would live with a family, and they would live like they were in an assisted care living situation, but it's foster care. There's also rehabilitation when we think, and I'm going to speak locally because here we are, right? Rehabilitation with SAM. So if there was an injury and you needed recovery, or a loved one needed recovery, they could go there for a time. But they also have long-term care, which some people don't ever go home, and so that's where they live. There's also, and it's not local, even though they offer hospice care, some places have an actual hospice where it's a building and people can go and pass with dignity. And so that would be something that there are some private individuals here that actually do that service. And so that's a good trend, that if someone is not able to die with dignity at home, then they could go to a place and do that with assistance. I also wanted to mention private care. And private care in the home, there's a lot of people that choose to live at home till they're passing, and their quality of life, they have a little more control over that, over what goes on in their life. So I just wanted to go over those to differentiate just a little bit. So when we think of assisted living, we need to consider what kind of services are available in assisted living. Normally, there is laundry service, either a coin-operated machine or a free machine, or that's part of your rent. That's a service they provide to the people living there. That's a thing that would be one of those things that you'd want to check out, that people wouldn't normally think of. They would just think, oh, I'm going to assisted living, I'm going to be cared for. Also, housekeeping. Most places will have a housekeeper come to the rooms, and they'll do the basic cleaning. They do the vacuuming, dusting, clean the bathroom, and it's usually around the resident's schedule. So that's oftentimes coordinated, and so that every Wednesday, someone will come to their apartment and clean and take care of that. Also, they provide transportation of some sort. Sometimes it's a bus, like at Seaview, and sometimes it's more of a van. And so depending on the size of the facility and their finances in being able to provide that, that is another service that they normally provide. Transportation, one thing I want to mention, they have a schedule. And so sometimes when we think of going to an assisted living, we think, oh, we can go, they can take me wherever I want to go. And so once again, there's always those boundaries and limits. And so it's really important to be thinking about other options. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is we have a lot of friends in assisted living. Would you say that we have a few friends out in assisted living? And so one of the really great things to care for our friends is to be able to say, hey, do you want to go shopping? And take them on one of their adventures that they want to go do. Going out of a building at any time is a real treat. And so I wanted to mention one trip that I took with my mom. We had gone out as a family. We'd gone out to lunch, and my mom had dementia, and she was pretty advanced. And my brother goes, why don't you take her out for a little bit? Go shopping. And I'm kind of looking at him, and as a nurse, I'm a little more cautious probably than some. It's like, I want to make sure my mom's going to be safe, and you know what I'm saying? And so we went to the one place I knew that she would love. We went to the fabric store. So my whole family, we like fabric. We like to touch fabric, we like to look at the artfulness of it, and I knew that she would just love that. And sure enough, we went there, and she touched every single bolt of fabric all the way around. And so she was doing that, and I had found a fabric to get some fabric. And so I was buying it with one eye on my mom, right? She comes up, and And I just came across this picture the other day, and it made me really it made me smile, it made me sad too. She had this bolt of fabric, and it was raccoons. And it was really, really cute. And I said, oh, Mom, let me take a picture. And so I got my phone, took a picture of her. And so, anyways, then took her back to the assisted living. And it was almost her dinner time. And so she went to dinner. And I went back to my hotel and got a call from my brother. We're at the hospital. I'm like, what? And he goes, what time did you drop Mom off? And he starts asking me questions. And I said, told him what had happened is my mom had gone back, and during the course of walking the hall to dinner, she had gotten in between somebody's wheelchair and the wall. And when I went to the hospital, I'm not kidding, this is really, you can't make this stuff up. She had 2 bruised eyes. I mean, I just kind of it really took me back, because here she was just a few hours earlier holding the raccoon fabric, And so I took a picture of her with her eyes, just a treasure, because it just shows things can happen so fast, and there's accidents that happen. And so, anyways, I like to share that. The other thing that part of the services that occur in assisted living are activities. And one thing that people don't always know is they have activities, they have cards, they'll do a painting, like they'll do nail painting, they'll do regular paintings, they'll do all sorts of activities to help people have something to do. They have games. And one of the assisted livings that I worked at had a game day, and it was Mexican train.
Oh, they love that.
And they love that, they love that. And what was really nice is, because it's a community, they brought anyone from the community here in to be able to play. And so sometimes people don't always realize that that's really what they're wanting, is to build that community within the community. And it's an important concept in taking care of our loved ones and our community members. So just in case you ever want to play some Mexican train, there's no excuse. It's out there. So the other thing that assisted livings offer, and not all of them, but a lot of them do, is respite care. We all know people that have loved ones with dementia that are trying to take care of them and sometimes need a break, either a medical break or a break. Maybe they need to go to a special trip and they're not able to take their loved one. And so respite care is available. And so they have rooms set up and they have special fee and all that. But with that, anyone that gets admitted into an assisted living, they have to go through the whole process of knowing what medications you're on. They have to do a full, what's called an assessment. And so they need doctor's orders for you. So just so you know, that is part of how that is managed. And it's not always offered, but it's certainly a great service, as you can imagine. So one thing I'm also going to mention that people don't always think about is moving once you're in assisted living. So there's several things I want to point out here. Let's say someone moved into a place and they really didn't like it. They can move out. That freedom is there. The other thing that happens is sometimes people move in, and let's say they're on the north side of the building and they like the south side of the building better because it's sunnier, or vice versa. So they actually can, if there's availability, have you move, right? So that is an option. Let's say you've got a noisy neighbor, or a neighbor that for whatever reason it was not working out. They can help manage that for the residents. So those sort of living situations really do happen, and so it's the administrator's job to help problem solve for that. One story I'm going to tell is my mom and Norm. My stepdad's name is Norm. They moved in to assisted living, and let's just do a guess. How many times did they move in 4 years? Anybody?
4 times.
How many?
4 times?
4 times? Let's try 6.
Oh my.
6 times, 4 years. And when you think about moving, who likes to move? Yeah, right. It's a big to-do. Well, with seniors, it's really a big deal because not only are they moving into a new space, but they have to reorient to that new space. And oftentimes we're not as sharp as we were when we were 30. Let's just call it. And so that helps some of them. It's really can be disorienting for them. So they did move 6 times, and it's not an unusual story. My friend's mom, and I'll tell her story because her story is actually, it's an important story to tell. She was living at home, big home, out in the country, and she broke her ankle. She was living by herself, as 27% of the United States do live by themselves. And she ended up going to the hospital. I'm pretty sure she had surgery, and she went to Good Sam for recovery. Well, her recovery time extended, and so it was really nice to be friends with those friends because I was able to help consider options with them. And so she ended up moving into assisted living. And so she was there and sold the house, and so her whole life plan changed just in one moment. And so she ended up moving 4 times, and the last time that she moved was a good move, really good move. She's from Ashland, and her family's from Ashland, and they moved back so that they could have their whole family unit there. You know, they're going to have grandchildren soon, and so that was really nice. And I really recommend in my book that people consider living where they're going to have relatives, because there's oftentimes needs that need to be met, and a lot of times we do rely on our relatives, right? And so that's my recommendation there. So also, when we think about assisted living, I like to mention illness. What happens if people get sick when they're in assisted living? Some people have the misconception that an assisted living is like a mini hospital, and it is not. I always like to make sure people know that. That's really important. They have aides there that are trained, and they also some assisted livings, and I will speak. Some states do not require it, but Oregon does require that an RN be on staff, and the RN does all the assessments. And what that means is, if there was someone that was ill, then the RN, and they didn't need immediate emergent care, the RN would go and see them and be watching them and evaluating them, and also contacting the doctor and be in communication there. So really important for people to understand that concept. Also, some people have been ill, and then they go to a hospital outside of the area and for extended periods of time. And just so everybody's clear, people are renting a room, and so that room, they would still need to pay their rent on that room even though they're gone. So that's how they're run. So the other thing I wanted to mention is hospice care, and I mentioned it earlier as an individual hospice, but some assisted livings allow hospice care within their facility. And so that means that they would have nurses from an outside agency, and they would come and give specialized care for that time. So,
Or
yes.
they have a section that they move you to once you're at that level.
Yes, sometimes some assisted livings have a section, yes. That's
So you might be in this section first as independent living. As it becomes needing assisted living, you might have to move to another building, but if you could stay within that community, and then the next step might be hospice or.
That's true. And some of the smaller assisted livings are a little more flexible in that. They have the ability to be a little more flexible, but that's a very good point. Thank
A lot of
you.
the ones in Medford and Grants Pass, those are the ones like that.
Yes. And thank you for pointing that out. That's an important thought.
Yeah, but sometimes you look into that before you move in, because you want one that you could stay in the community
Right.
or stay in your same room.
Right, and so they start usually, I shouldn't say usually, often they start independent, and then as they need more care, then they can change to different rooms or different part of the facility. With each need for more care, there is an associated fee, and so you always have the rent, and then you have more and more fees that occur based on the amount of care that people need, and that includes medications, that includes like wound care, and those are two that come to mind. Wheelchair assistance, that sort of thing. So those are things that people need to know and don't always think about. So I do want to introduce my book. You saw it out front, and it's a teaching tool for families and a person thinking about assisted living, but it's also ultimately for care providers. It's really important that people that are caring for individuals really understand what they're doing inside that building. They're not just feeding people and taking care of personal needs. There is more to the story. I include games and activities, celebrations, entertainment, end of life, making wishes clear, depression. It's common. It's 6 to 10% of the general population is prone to depression. I talk about communication. Talk about things like dress codes, that people may not have ever even considered, and it can be pretty overwhelming when you are thinking about, assisted living. So there's lots of different things in, yes, dress code.
I was just thinking of somebody walking around and, yeah. Like that.
Right,
No,
please get dressed. Anyways, this book, I'm really thankful that I wrote it, because I've been able to get feedback from some good friends that have actually used it or read it. It's at the ophthalmologist's office and physical therapy. It's at, locally it's Curry, the Curry on
Fitness.
Curry on 5th Street.
Yeah,
The-
coastal fitness.
Yes, coastal
Also
thinking.
physical therapy.
Anyways, it has really been helpful for me to be able to research it and share it. I made a copy of the appendix from the back of the book, and it's basically a way for people to evaluate assisted livings. So let's say that you're going to 5 different assisted livings. It's just like when you're looking for a place to live. After a while, they start meshing together. And so it's a tool that people can use to see if it's a place that they would even consider living, and to give it a clear way of doing it. And it also looks at, I mentioned meal times, because sometimes meal times are not a good time for the people that are considering it. and that's got the dress code. Also, I talk about amenities, list 3 amenities. We don't have them here, but there are some assisted livings up in Washington in particular that are like huge country clubs. And they come with a big price tag too. So amenities equals, a lot of times your price is going to be probably going up. Just that would be what you would be looking for. So anyways, this is a tool, and there's several out front when we're done here.
Do you mention in there anything about like when they have a few low-income housing spaces?
You know, I don't remember mentioning that, to be quite honest. That I basically encourage people to go see, go talk, just go check it out. But that is true. That's they usually have a few low-income spaces available. And so people don't always think about that. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, the majority of the time it's a long waiting list, so a good 2 years at least. And you wind up with a studio apartment, not a full bedroom and apartment. And they take majority of your money and they leave you with a certain amount. I think it's 150 now, it used to be 100. And you're to live on that amount to pay for your phone or whatever else you want. Because they pay for all your food. I mean, your meals are paid for, you just have to like what they're going to serve. You know, but you can, with that little bit of money that you do have, you can buy your own food. You know, if you don't, just for snacks or something.
Right.
You know.
One of the appendixes in the book is budget considerations. I can't use clear, I use a range, but I also use considerations. What do you spend your money on? There's, you're still going to want to get some gifts for people in your life and little things that you would enjoy for your life. So, anyways, I thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that you're here and sharing that.
I'm sorry. I used to manage senior center, so I had a lot of these questions come up and I had to look into it.
Right.
Now I'm looking into it for myself.
Yeah, and this book is actually at our local senior center as well, and I've given a presentation there in the past. So in closing, I'd like to encourage you and your family to discuss your plans for your retirement years, and what would you like that to look like? Where do you want to live? Who do you want caring for you? And as the decades pass, we need to be mindful of our futures. And my hope is that this book helps many in considering their options. Yes, Doug?
What were some of the considerations that led your parents to make those moves that you talked about?
Good question. So initially they had a little apartment, and it was perfect for them. They had a dog, and so the care facility felt that my mom needed more care, so they moved them from that apartment after about 6 months after they'd lived there to another part of the facility. And then from that point, then I'll tell you this, my brother was in charge, by the way. As a family, even though I'm a nurse, even though I had information, my brother was my mom's person. Does everybody understand what that means? They were very close. And so I didn't want to interfere with the care that she needed in any way. And so when we went there, I basically said, he's in charge, period. And so with that, my brother, looking out for my mom, recognized with the help of the facility that she needed to be at a higher level of care because there were some issues that were happening in the relationship of her husband and her that were not healthy for her. And so then she moved to assisted living, the dementia care, and he moved into another apartment, a smaller one. After my mom passed, then his daughters moved him into another facility that actually didn't have care per se, and they actually hired one of my nieces to come in every day, make sure he got showered, took his medications, and so they basically hired outside help to take care of him. And then he ended up in the hospital and ended up in a rehab for the last several weeks of his life. So bouncing around quite a bit. My family in Bend made all those moves each time.
So it sounds like it was care considerations more than it was like the amenities or the atmosphere or the food or things like that.
Right. You know what, they were very happy where they were. And it's kind of interesting, the builder of the facility, Aspen Ridge in Bend, is the same builder as Seaview here.
Oh.
So very well built, very nice community. Are there any questions that I could maybe answer?
How about families and visiting? You know, if my mother goes into a care facility, but she's a little reluctant, then is that a big consideration when people come and go and meal times and things like that? You did mention meal times.
Oh, I did. You know what? Actually, family is encouraged. Just like I mentioned earlier about the community, including in that community is family support. Oftentimes, assisted livings will have a special room so that families can actually have time together in private, and they truly encourage families to participate in care. One of the things that I have dug in this book, which is really helpful for people, is lists of shopping lists and for brands. And I know I'm kind of going sideways here, but when we talk about food is really important to some of us more than others. But we all like our specific brands. We all like our specific things that we like. And so that's in there so that if, say for instance, your person wants you to go shopping, you'll know exactly what to get for them. And so you could prepare a meal around what they like and actually bring it into the facility.
Yes, some of the facilities have a room to rent for family when they come to stay and visit their loved one. And it has to be, maybe ahead of time.
Prearranged.
Arranged, yeah. But not all of them, so don't just assume they do. And they really don't want you spending the night in the room where your loved one is, because usually there's not room for you. There's just one bed, and unless mom's okay with you spending the night with her or dad, they really would probably want you to get a hotel room instead if they don't have the facilities available. So you just have to call and find out what they're willing to do.
Find out the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the first 24, 48, 72 hours like when someone moves into a facility?
Good, great question. So basically, I talk about moving in the book because it is important. And I'm going to back up here a little bit. So for families that are moving their loved ones into an assisted living facility, community, they normally will make sure everything is set for their loved ones. TVs are plugged in, they have their internet, they have, they'll take usually the weekend to get people settled. And so they're making sure their medications are all set. If they've moved to a different community, that they're lined up with a doctor and dentist, that sort of thing. And it's settling in. The residents I've seen that get moved in by their family, and I kind of think of it as nestling, as really just taking the time to make sure that everything is managed so that they can move forward. They do 10 times better than those that are not supported in that manner. I have seen the flip side of that, and where someone has moved in with boxes to unpack and nothing is purchased for them, their food supply, their area isn't fixed up. So I really encourage family to plan, or whoever's moving them, to stay there, not necessarily like in a hotel, but stay for the first couple of days to let them get settled in, meet a couple of people, have a couple of meals with the resident, so that they can settle in. Does that answer your question? Yes.
What organizations are available in the county to offer counseling and possibly financial help to someone in need of assisted living?
Good question, and I don't have that answer.
Okay.
I know there's an answer for that. If somebody else has the answer in the room, please share it.
So I have a question. I had a friend whose mom had dementia at a very young age. So her mom had already been in a facility for, well, actually, she had been taking care of her mom at home until her mom started escaping and, not staying in the home. And so she tried to research and found a place for her. How do you tell whether what's going on is because of the patient's dementia, like level of care, as opposed to maybe neglect from the facility?
This, there's such a fine line there, Colleen, and really, I gave my mom's situation, I expressed that because things can happen so quickly, and there's sometimes you see a repeated pattern, and sometimes that's part of their dementia. People don't always understand that dementia, a lot of times they have sundowners. Once it starts getting dark, they're not doing as well as they were during the day. They're not as clear-headed. They might get mean. They might get paranoid, and they'll make false accusations. And so with patients with dementia, it is very, very challenging. And that's the sort of thing, like if you had a loved one that was, let's say you're here and they're somewhere else, that's where you can get the state involved and have them help monitor that. Because the state does intervene and take any sort of injury to our seniors very seriously.
So nowadays when you have like cameras, like our kids have a camera at their house that we can check in on and just talk to the grandkids when we want. Can you do that for, if my mom was to go into assisted living, could we as the family put a camera in the room and view it? Or are there, rules with the facility that would not allow that?
Yeah, I'm not even able to answer that, just because each state has different rules around assisted living. And that would be something to discuss with the particular assisted living that that person is living in. Because there is privacy, there's privacy laws. Yes?
I know several people who have done that for their parents in a local assisted living facility because they were concerned about the level of care.
Okay.
Did the facility know?
I don't know. At some point they did because they were shown the video of the lack of care in an attempt to get it rectified.
Wow.
If you expect the facility to pay for it, yeah, forget it. But if you are just asking permission to do it yourself, then they might bring up the privacy laws. And but if your mother or father, your loved one, father, agree to it, but they have dementia. So I mean, if their guardian agrees, I guess, then and the facility says it's okay, then I'm sure that they would. But, nowadays we can Skype, we can do, so like when you're there, you can set up a little, what do they call those now, where you can, it sits right near you, and then you just say, Alexa, and then there you are, and so you could try and teach your loved one to say something like that if there's something going on where they're not, all she has to do is say, I'll use the she because I'm just used to saying she. All she has to do is say, help or whatever the key word could be, and next thing you know, it's being shown to whoever's on the other end of the phone, and that might, be a little better than nothing.
So can you address financial a little bit? Like how do you, does Medicaid help pay for some? How do you work out that kind of stuff?
I really don't address the financial per se. I do point out, I'm going to read just out of my list because it is an important component of assisted living. Did you find it?
They run into 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 a month.
So I list possible sources of your income can include investments, part-time job, which people do have part-time jobs, pension, retirement from previous jobs, sale of valuables, Social Security, state compensation, and Veterans Administration. And that's where going to an assisted living facility and saying, I'm considering assisted living at some point. What are my options? Is there financial assistance available? It's always best to ask as locally and right when it's happening, because there's new things that come about. So does that answer that, Colleen?
Well, I didn't know if you could use your Social Security, if they consider that income, and if you can, use that to then help pay for it.
Yes.
Do any of the local facilities require a buy-in? Because many assisted living facilities in New England and on the East Coast, you turn over your savings to them and you get a credit against the cost for that. And sometimes when you turn them over, you don't get them back, regardless of how long you're there. I actually represented a couple whose mother was being thrown out of one of those facilities. She went off her meds and attacked her roommate. And the real concern was that they were going to force her to leave and not refund any of a substantial deposit that was made. So you really want to have someone that understands a contract look at these things. And I'm sure if you contacted the Oregon Bar Association, they would make a referral for you to a local lawyer who at least purports to be knowledgeable in that area. There's got to be at least one.
It's like, has anybody in this room, I haven't seen the buy-in here.
No.
And I don't even know if
Unless
that's
it's changed in like the last year, there is none
Right,
around here
I don't
like
know if
that.
it's done in Oregon or not, but that's kind of an interesting concept, isn't it? Because, Any other questions? Yes.
You said that they will do an evaluation before they admit. I mean, is that to make sure that they're being placed, the client's being placed at the right level of care?
Yes, that is exactly right. So the nurses will make sure that the residents have their mental faculties. They'll make sure that they're able to walk on their own, or that if they need assistance, then what that is. And they look at their skin, they make sure that if there's any bruising, they have to document everything. It's a very thorough assessment.
Is it tiring for that person going into the assisted living? Is that assessment tiring for them? Like,
Yeah.
it would almost be
Yeah.
to the point where they wouldn't want to then go there?
It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to fill out all the paperwork and to do the assessment. And sometimes there's additional information that the nurse needs from the family or the doctor, and so that's all what they do. Good questions tonight, gang. Is there any other questions?
The biggest question that I have is that whenever you get to the point where you're considering this, the first thing you need to look at is the amount of money you have available to help you. And for some people, that is very difficult because they may not have the ability to take care of themselves at the time needed and the expense entailed.
That's a very good point. I know, I'll share one other personal story if you'd like to hear it. I did have my aunt and uncle, and their life plan was to live at home. And my brother was involved in their care and their planning also. My brother is amazing, by the way. He's a very caring and compassionate man, and the book is dedicated to my brother Mark. Because of that, he really makes sure that people get what they want, what makes them happy. And so my aunt and uncle, they lived in their own home, and they had neighbors that checked in on them regularly. They lived in Oklahoma. Their neighbor came and he shoveled snow regularly when it snowed. And it was interesting going back there at a time when my uncle had passed out in the backyard because of a urinary tract infection. My brother found him. He just happened to be coming that Friday. And so he spent the weekend in the hospital, and I'm kind of veering off, I'm sorry, but bottom line is by Tuesday my brother said, "Can you come out here and help?" And I said, let's get on the next plane, let's just go. And so I got to spend that time with my aunt who had dementia. And my uncle, when I got there, there's no way he could have stayed at home. And here you have someone with dementia that you can't leave alone. And it was really amazing. Their community of friends, they pitched in and they helped out. And I actually didn't have any fights with anyone about it. I said he needs to be in rehab. He needs to, for his safety. And it was really, for me, it was really hard because here you have, an uncle you've known all your life, and they look up at you, "Are you sure?" And I said yes. But then once I went home and I asked, how is he doing? Is he now walking? What's going on with him? And he was at another point in time. He was doing better. He was working out with physical therapy. And that's when I made the call to his person that lived there that was helping out. I said, get him home. Because I knew his life plan. His life plan was to be at home. And so I think that's where that communication with your family, opening up that dialogue, and sharing what you really do see as what you would like. It's an important conversation. So somebody can honor it for you if you're not able to honor it.
I have one more question because I'm new here. So
Yes.
You mentioned several places in town, Azalea Gardens, Seaview.
Ocean Park.
So what are the differences between those
Well,
places?
okay, so there's the largest one is Seaview, and it's multi-story, it's 3 or 4 stories, I think. And it's a very large facility. Azalea Gardens has approximately, I'm gonna guess 30 to 35 rooms. And so it's a smaller community. Ocean Park has dementia care and assisted living. And they're best known for their dementia care. And I don't know how many rooms they have, but it's independently owned. So that's what I know.
So dementia would go to Ocean Park more so than the other ones?
Not necessarily.
That's their specialty?
It's just that's what they're known for. Azalea Gardens opened up a dementia care several years ago. And so basically dementia care basically has to be a locked facility because people with dementia oftentimes wander and they need to be monitored closer than someone that's independent. So, and does Seaview have dementia care?
Seaview has
They
that
do,
section.
yes, they do, they absolutely do. They have and it's locked. And it's not even, you don't really see it when you're there.
There is an assisted living place in Gold Beach, I forgot the name of it now. But it's run by the hospital up there.
I saw Burma's hand next.
Oh, well, I was thinking about the hospice. So the facilities here do not have a section that's for the purpose of hospice patients.
No.
So the only hospice services we have would be in-home hospice.
Good question.
Volunteers.
Let me clarify that. Basically, some assisted livings, I know that Azalea Gardens has, they will accept hospice care in their rooms.
Okay.
So,
They do.
and I don't know about Seaview, if they do or not. That'd be a good question for me to ask them.
So
I
hospice
think they do.
services would go to the facility. The facility doesn't have their own hospice
Right.
service.
That's true.
Okay.
That's true, yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, I did, I was
Yes.
asking, but
Yes.
And I've lived in this town quite a long time, and I've been in homes where a particular person has care for 2 people or 4 people and does care for them in those localities. So there's smaller places that you can look forward to.
Yes.
Like it's more individual. And then there's a group of people who come to your home and stay on shifts and live with you and do the housework and take care of the person too. That's another way that you can handle and care.
That's true. Lots of options, and it is important to know the different components that are out there. So, well, thank you all for coming out tonight, and I appreciate the conversation and the questions, and thank you again.